Welcome to My Money Mindset podcast, where we explore how a healthy mindset is the foundation for financial success. Each week, we delve into mindset hacks and practical strategies to help you enhance your income, help you make more appropriate investments for yourself, and to improve your overall financial well-being. Join us on this journey to transform your financial future by transforming your mindset. Please note that the information provided on this podcast is for general information purposes only and does not constitute as personal, financial, or health advice. It has been prepared without considering your individual objectives, financial situation, or life needs. Before making any financial or health decisions, you should consult with a qualified professional or financial advisor to ensure the information aligns with your specific circumstances. So let's begin and enjoy this journey as each episode teaches us on how to improve our overall mindset that overall improves our financial success. Hey everyone, and in this episode I'm going to do a Q&A or what I'll start doing, as I've been requested by quite a few people now that have been emailing and messaging me to actually share some experiences that I've had with clients and some experiences that obviously are so vast and different in their approach, yet the commonality there is trying to withhold a family unit, build success, build a business, maintain a business, survive from a business, legal action. It revolves around a whole gist of things that life brings at us every day. And I suppose for the next few episodes, I'm going to share a lot of these with you guys simply because I think in some form or fashion, everyone can relate to some of these stories in a way, right? And now everyone's issue or dilemma or drive or goal is different, right? They're not always the same, but these stories help us simulate that we can somehow see that in some obscurity that we're not all so different, but in some ways we need specific things. Now, finance is always a difficult thing. Now, whether I'm coaching, counseling, or mortgage brokering, or finance brokering, or whatever it may be, private lending, it's always different. And there's always a different requirement that requires TLC. And when I say TLC, or tender loving care, it's pretty much that. It's trying to fit the concerns and solutions to the financial product and financial institution. Now, it seems long-winded, but it requires all these moving parts in order for a successful person to become successful in a finance sense, right? Now, finance isn't everything, and I've got to really emphasize that. It's not about the finance in most instances, but about the motivation and the level of positive confidence, knowledge, wisdom, open-mindedness. Now, open-mindedness that a person has. Now, all these attributes or personality traits, making sure that their energy levels are right up there. And when I'm saying energy levels, it doesn't mean they've got to be a real athlete or anything like that, but a balanced, healthy lifestyle. A lot of people always hear me talk about maintaining your health. I always say maintain your health and fitness, in a sense to say it's probably the most important thing of all things, not the finance, simply because a healthy body will develop a healthy mind. That is so important. And with a healthy mind, that's the beginning of where we start engaging and finding out exactly what the issue is. A healthy mind is able to reflect upon anything really to the best degree and provide transparency to communicate what the issue is. And what I'm going with this is, if you've got a clear mind and a clear conscience to be able to say, right, okay, I know what's going on, but some things are lost in communication. Now, with finance, it's communication via expressing yourself, expressing exactly what's going on, finding out more about you, and it could be a business, about the business, could be a property, could be about the property, about your goals, your intentions, your relationships, your whatever it may be that's going on in your life right now, not so much what happened in the past, where you want to be in the future. These things have to be clear and concise. It's so cliche, right? But it is so true. And that's where we're trying to stretch this commonality. If you could somehow understand that finance requires a lot of numbers, but in order to provide those numbers have to fit you, because without you, the finance does not exist. So you are more important than the finance. It's just sometimes we turn it the other way around. We say finance is more important than my business or me or the house or etc. So you are most important. What you're doing is most important. We just got to fit the finance, right? So moving along, that was pretty long-winded, but I'm going to get to the first. I had a phone call. This was quite a number of years ago, and I'll use the name as Fred. And Fred had a business, quite a successful business in manufacturing, printing, carton manufacturing. And Fred basically said, he rang me up and he said that he was in desperate need of finance simply because his suppliers were not really supplying his manufacturing, so paper, cardboard, inks, that sort of stuff, in order to maintain an efficiency of manufacturing. And the reason this was he had no reason. He goes, look, my suppliers are really not are favourable to me. I've been really good in the past. I don't know what's going on, but they forever tell me they're going to stop my account because I'm not paying it, but I do pay it, and I'm not sure what's going on. And from that concern of how can you help me with finance, I had to delve into Fred's business about what was going on with the cash flow, right? So this experience that I'm going to talk about today, episode, is about a business operation, and you're going to simulate this to yourself if you ever thought that you may want to do a side hustle business or whatever. Don't look at so much what the business is, but the nature of where we're going with what happened here. So when Fred actually approached me, he said to me, and he said, Mark, I don't know what's going on. Sometimes I'm late. Sometimes my clients don't pay me on time. I normally do a 30-day account or a 60-day account. At that time, Fred was sort of somewhat on his own with the accounts. He didn't really have anyone there to be doing the accounts. He didn't contract anyone. He had great software, latest technology, etc. He was really up there when it came to technology, efficiency, stuff like that. Really good operator, but it just somehow this cash flow was affecting this great business that was very technologically advanced. Even like this was 5 years ago. So, and still to this day, he still is very technologically advanced. So he had all the mod cons, he had a great building that we ended up buying for him, as in financing. So he ended up buying the building that he was in rather than renting, and we had it put into his superannuation. So Fred was always destined to do really well, and he knew that the success of business was all about consistency, about performance, about being there, about being of healthy mind and body. And Fred always did what he had to do in order to make this business go well. But the Achilles heel here was cash flow. His suppliers were telling him they were going to stop supplying to him. It was preventing him from the efficiencies of manufacturing. Obviously, without supplies, you can't manufacture. And it would have created a real issue, which it was creating a real issue for Fred, right? From that, it basically went into the point where he was sort of toying around with cash flow, balancing, putting from one account to the other, then stealing from his own home equity and putting into his business, then paying his home equity back. Real balancing act. Then he'd borrow or do some private lending. He had another property that he could utilize the equity, but then he ended up losing that property, I later found out, simply because of cash flow and cash flow issues in order to keep the business alive. So there it was when he rang me and he said, look, Mark, I've been in operation for the last 11 years. I've really done everything I possibly can, but this cash flow is killing me. I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul, so literally taking money from our own house where my wife is really upset with me. It's causing issues, but I end up paying it back, but it's just always flipping, and then I'd get a tax bill and I've got to flip the money back again, and I'm toying around. I tried business finance. They were really high with interest rates and I couldn't afford the repayments so much. It wasn't a solution. It was just literally a Band-Aid, as in a high interest returning sort of business loan. So what these business loans do, they're called unsecured business loans. They give you like a cash facility. And Fred basically did this prior to meeting me simply because he thought if he was able to get some money as in to pay the suppliers, he would get this cash flow and be able to manage it with a comfortability by having this surplus of 100,000. Now, what happens with these business loans? You either can get them on a term loan or as a line of credit. Now, what's better? Well, not sure, not so much. Depends on the business. You really got to figure that out. But a line of credit facility, which is just open, it's not a term loan, like it doesn't go over like a 3 or 5 year period, is probably something you got to make sure you know your business. And if your business can take advantage of just having an open line of credit, it's a great way of keeping your own cash. What they do is they sometimes do it based on secured of the assets of the business, or it could be unsecured. Obviously, the secured ones are higher in provision, so the loan can often be higher because there's a security attached to it, right? It's unsecured. They really got to read the financials, how your cash flow currently is, and how they could make an advantage. The problem with these short-term loans, guys, whether it be a term loan or just cash facility, is the high interest rate. Now, arguably, a lot of people turn up and go, well, you know, we can claim it and all this sort of stuff. Yes, you can, but it's really got to make sure that you're not just getting injection of cash to then sustain this. Sometimes they're ridiculous, 15%, 20%, respectively. Some can be at 10%. Depends during the economy, the times. I mean, I've seen interest rates change well over the last 20 odd years. So they do range, but commonly business loans, unsecured, or even if they're secured against some of the assets of the business, can be fairly high. So Fred basically turned up and he said, Mark, you got to help me here. I don't know what to do here. I really, it's affecting my business and I feel as though my productivity is affecting my profit, which it was. And you could actually see the quarterly BAS statements going down, down, down. His accountant wasn't really reactive, although the accountant was really good at his job. Fantastic, if anything. He had a brilliant team behind him. But they just weren't getting intrinsically involved with Fred's business. And what Fred was doing was, whilst he was working the business or working in the business, he wasn't working on the business. And what he would find is if he worked on the business, as in on the figures, planning, making sure that it can go well, what could he do to implement certain things, he would then have to work in the business during the day, and he was really stretching himself thin to the point where it was affecting his family life. Now, there's the red flag, guys. Business should not be affecting your family life. Now, of course it does. It doesn't mean that you're gonna, not have it affected. Any business, we're all human, or any career is always going to affect the family life simply because it affects the main person in the business or in the career or in the job that is carrying the burden or the issue or the concern at the time, right? And that's what the family life's for, is to share these things. So don't take it to heart if you're a business owner or a wife or a husband that is in a career-driven, really take it upon your shoulders. It could even be you're at uni, right? And the stress of exams and stuff like that. But what you've got to make sure is always make sure that you're sort of sharing this stuff. Don't just bottle it in. Fred was bottling it in. What did that do? Well, it didn't really do him any favors in the family, and it sort of started to rock the boat in his relationship with his wife, which was quite unfortunate. Thankfully, we got there in time enough to action and create somewhat a bit of a goal plan. Now, how did we fix Fred's cash flow? It wasn't about fixing the cash flow. It was about more so creating solutions in the business. It wasn't just that I waved the magic wand. Now, first and foremost, the main thing here was to make sure that Fred's headspace was in a good way. And this is hard, right? This is probably the hardest point. What you've got to do to turn your business around or your career around is your headspace, simply because in the 24 hours that you have in a day, most of them you're probably working, trying to sustain a family life, relationships, etc., kids, there's so many things. You really don't have time to look back and reflect upon yourself, to have an open mind and say, how can I fix myself? And 9 times out of 10, it's quite hard for anyone to actually fix themselves, simply because we are social beings. We need to talk to people. Thus, started expressing. The first meeting was meet up with Fred. What is actually going on? And quite often in these instances, the operator, the manager, the director, the owner, the responsible person is the one with all the issues. But quite often it's when we get down and we find exactly what's going on, as in cash flow, we can link it to the personality traits in order to rectify those personality traits, not for that financial issue to reoccur in the future. So what we're actually doing is we're finding the financial issue, rectifying it through the drive or the knowledge or the wisdom and the experience of the operator, and therefore they're able to then implement this knowledge and skill and experience in the future to prevent it from happening again. If that sort of somewhat makes sense. It's like the old story of giving someone a fishing rod, not the fish, in order for them to eat continually in the future, right? So once we started opening up, communicating with Fred and starting to find out what the everyday looked like for him, basically it wasn't hard to implement the finance simply because Fred had already done a great job, but there was a problem. It was only one problem, and that problem was cash flow. Now, the stopgap or solution evidently would have been said, well, just fund it, give him money, and then he should be right, because then his mind frame will be back in place. He'll know how to manage it, and off we go. Yes and no, but I'd like to think that Fred, because he was so attached, so well-driven, so specific with his business, he really wanted to be successful, and he wanted to build this business to a point where he would one day either sell it or, joint venture it with someone or whatever, and continue to make a lot of money and do very well for himself. So yes, what happened was a bit of a step-by-step. What we did is we basically implemented a small cash flow to rectify some of the other issues, and let's say making sure the suppliers were paid. But then we had the concern of his own issue of not collecting the money on time from his clients. That was more of an issue. And the reason that was more of an issue was simply because it was something that in Fred was quite a very accommodating person, really nice guy. He's a fantastic guy. He's always willing to help. He does so well in his business. He does the extra mile for his clients. He just does it simply because that's the person he is. A very giving person, very happy-go-lucky person, very driven person, but he just sometimes overstepped it with generosity, let's say, which I could relate to, which I do relate to. And there's nothing wrong with generosity simply because it's pretty much our personality traits that are able to give more. And it wasn't about changing Fred and saying, listen, Fred, you got to tighten up, you got to toughen up and you got to do this. Nothing like that. It was more about letting Fred be who he is, enjoying who he is. He loved what he did, but somehow implementing a specific way of getting the money back earlier. And that was another tactic that we had to do, and make sure that the money, not getting it early, was making sure that it was paid on time by his clients. And we implemented small tactical things, relationship building with the clients. We specifically underwent some contracts that the clients would specifically sign. They would be termed. It made it more professional. So basically what we were doing is saying to Fred's clients and potential clients or past clients, hey, from now on, it's specifically 30 days. Unfortunately, due to the fact of cash flow, please understand. And we got a really good reaction from this. Now, obviously, my team had to sort of draft up all the legal documentation in order for the contracts specific to what the requirements were. We actually provided our clients with a solution that if they were unable because of cash flow to pay Fred on time, not to say, well, we're stopping and so on and so forth, because that would have created a sort of another problem, but we would engage with the clients and sort of say, look, please excuse the fact that we're toughening up on Fred's terms of 30 days. They've got to be specific that he's paid on 30 days. But is there anything else that we could do to help to make sure that this cash flow effect, as in Fred's clients, for them to improve their cash flow? So it sort of went down the train to the point where everyone had this continuity of cash flow for whatever reason. And sometimes it's not about just injecting with cash, because that can create another liability, right? Getting a loan, more liability, creates a lot more stress. You're disfocused on your business, more focused on paying your debt off, and off the business goes to crap, right? Not the way to go in a lot of instances. This was about micromanaging and pulling apart to find out where the issue was in Fred's business, and that was late payments from his clients. So basically what happened in a short time was that his clients got sort of engaged in this, were really happy and receptive, because obviously they got businesses to run, and they were really understanding. It took a while, but through communication, education, being there, empathy, we managed for all these businesses, as in Fred, his clients, the clients' businesses, so on and so forth, their suppliers, that there was a continuity of cash flow. Why did this work? And some clients didn't want it to work simply because they weren't open to it, and they said, well, basically, we've got other people that we can use for, in the printing manufacturing industry. We're just going to go with them. We didn't really want to keep those clients. They weren't happy to engage. What happened with that is the moment that we got rid of these clients, or we wouldn't no longer do business with these clients because they were a liability. Simply the reason is, and people go, well, aren't you mad? Because these clients, they eventually pay. What was happening is they may eventually pay, but they were restricting Fred from actually trading as what Fred should be trading at the optimum profitability. Now, I don't believe in business that people should be affecting other people's businesses just because they didn't want to work in with people. An open mind, or a business owner or operator or investor should always have an open mind to understand that sometimes the provider or the supplier is as important as their clients. So it's a balancing act, right? And that goes for even investors or homeowners. The banks aren't always to blame. Sometimes it could be the person borrowing the money that's to blame. So don't always assume, oh, look, I'm not getting ahead in life simply because, oh, the banks aren't lending me, or I can't get finance. There are other solutions towards before we even look at getting the finance. And that has to be worked out at a level of pulling apart and really micro-analysis upon the business or the investor or their goals, right? So going back to Fred, we basically created this transition where all his suppliers were happy to supply him. All his clients were really happy to pay on time, if not earlier. Some did struggle a little bit, but we ended up fixing that. Is it working well today? Yes, it is. It's going really well. It's not just simply we fixed it and walked away. We do help Fred manage it. We also assist him and his accountants keep that business running well-oiled. The moral of this story was more about cash flow and not allowing Fred's business to go into the ground and literally close up simply because he was running out of money due to the fact that his suppliers were going to stop supply, or were stopping supply, and preventing him from manufacturing at optimum level, thus affecting his profit levels. And that's the moment you understand, well, you shouldn't be in business because you're soon going to hit a wall, and you're going to, if the way Fred was going by robbing his home loan equity to pay it back and to balance the books and everything like that, it was not working. Only just to begin, it was only going to head into a disaster, right? So there it is. Funding or finance isn't always a solution. But what is the solution is a healthy mind and a healthy open-mindedness. And then that created, that open-mindedness was somewhat something that spread to Fred's clients. Yeah, so the clients got wind of this. The ones that had an open mind and wanted to work with Fred and were really grateful for what he's done in the past and wanted to work with him in the future, that really was contagious. That spread to other clients. He actually grew more clients because of this, simply because there was a harmonious sort of balance of continuity and agreements and business transactions. Fred would never overcharge. He would never rip his clients off. They understood that. He always provided a great product simply because he was always technologically up to date. He employed lovely staff. He still does to this day. His staff, in Fred's words, were that my staff make me. They are beautiful people. They're all family people. They all want to strive to do better for the business, and he really appreciated it. It was tapping into that. That's Fred's business. It wasn't how much are you making, Fred? What's your profit and losses? What are your balancing books? Yes, it is about that because we've got to fix that in order for it to become profitable, but it was about the culture, the intent of the business, the whole ethos of the business. Who is Fred? Who is his operators? Who are his employers? Who are the people behind Fred to back him up that enabled us to be able to get that cash flow working again? Then from that open-mindedness, we had the fact that now we start implementing the finance, because quite easily we could have implemented the finance to stop the water from gushing out, right? The profit was just spewing out of the business. So you just plug it up with some finance. No, it wasn't about that. And it sounds like it takes forever. It doesn't. This literally took a week to fix. From the first phone call to chatting with Fred, to meeting up with Fred, to looking at the business with Fred, implementing what we needed as a solution, as in a game plan, and then acting on that game plan and getting Fred back on track. And it worked well. So I hope you got a bit out of this episode. There will be others. I think that they're a great idea because they sort of provide us with an indication. And just like Fred, if you had a plumbing business, or you've got a small ladies' clothing shop or something like that, and things aren't going too well, and you think straight away, my business isn't going well simply because of cash flow and clients and stuff like that. It sometimes isn't about, oh, I should be marketing, or I should be putting more on SEO, Google, spend more ads, stuff like that. Sometimes it's about you finding out what it is about you that we could tweak, and find out exactly what it could be, how your personality traits or something that could be missing or could be overcompensated. You don't know, and it's hard to reflect. Ask your family members, ask your friends, but ask the people that actually know about the business or the finance side of things for your business. It is difficult, guys. Owning a business or operating an investment or investments it requires work. It requires finger on the pulse stuff, right? And because technology and things are advancing so rapidly in today, we find it very difficult to be able to do this for ourselves. And quite often we can get lost, even though we've been successful in the past. But being able to lean on the right people, and it's not always your accountants or lawyers and stuff like that. It could be people that's around you. They're the ones that actually can reflect. And if you've got an open mind, then you've got an open ticket to success. I always say it, because an open mind without any prohibitions or anything to say or connotations to sway to the left or the right, an open mind is literally, hey, what can I do that's going to improve upon where I currently am, right? Hope it helps. I hope it's not too long. It did stretch a little bit out, this episode, but hit me up and email me if you need me to be more specific on something in another episode. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.